Now presenting Stephen Eliscu with DMG Blockchain Solutions.
Thank you. I'm Chief Operating Officer of DMG. Also, Sheldon Bennett, our CEO, was not able to make it today, but both of us are always available to answer questions, and we look forward to telling you more an update on our story, which is really exciting. So first, we're going to make forward-looking statements. This presentation deck is on our website. We encourage you to download it and read these disclosures carefully. So let me tell you a little bit about DMG. The company was founded in 2016, went public through an RTO in early 2018, has a U.S. subsidiary called Blockseer, which was acquired shortly thereafter, and is really the core of the software strategy that we'll talk about today. The company is based in Vancouver, and in terms of looking at some of the financials, want to make sure to see that when we look at the numbers, we'll go through, look at the end about some of our quarterlies. Given the lift in the whole cryptocurrency and Bitcoin sector, our outlook is certainly quite favorable. The other thing I want to mention in terms of one of the things people focus on in terms of the strength of the balance sheet, besides the debt, which we have $1 million of debt, very low level, is the amount of Bitcoin on our balance sheets. Generally, we have not been selling that off, and this balance remains quite stable. So as you can imagine, given the lift of Bitcoin since the end of December, when we printed these numbers, that we're seeing a nice lift on the value of our balance sheet. Also, we have our data center in Christina Lake that's also in British Columbia, in the beautiful eastern British Columbia. We'll show a couple photos of that when we step through the deck. So we look at the progression of DMG. The company, I gave you some early data points. We did raise $98 million a couple of years ago. That enabled us to make a conversion from being primarily a Bitcoin mining hoster to self-mining. Today, we have nearly an exahash of mining capacity. But what's really exciting is the software strategy that we've been talking about for a long time is really coming into fruition. So we have our pool, Terra Pool, the world's first carbon neutral pool. Our goal this year is to expand that pool. And the economics of, we're making the economics of that pool going forward to be very attractive. So when we look at why aren't we growing the size of that pool, we're addressing those issues. And so this is a primary goal for this year. Along with that is we've been talking, we've had press releases about ordinals, and today will be kind of the first time that we actually show all of the major projects that we've done. But what's exciting is this is just scratching the surface. There are other things coming, there are new technologies and new things that people want that we can deliver with our capabilities. And then on the mining side, we want to grow additional capacity and roll out immersion cooling. We have been talking a lot about immersion cooling for a couple of years now. We're now really in the process of rolling that out. But as we've said, we're slowing the deployment of that. And so that deployment will likely take a lot longer than getting out the middle of this year. So when we look at the company, we really try to keep it simple. Two pieces, core, as the name implies, it's our core business. It's Bitcoin mining, this is what generates the revenue. But its core is also a foundation for the software that we call Core Plus. And when you look at what that software is comprised of, the first thing is the pools. We have specifically TerraPool. So what we want to do is bring together other green miners to be able to take advantage of what we're doing with all the other software. And the next piece is the clean block mining. We've talked about that in terms of filtering out bad actors based on the U.S. Department of Treasury's OFAC blacklist. That's just one piece. What we also can do is to inject in content from known good actors. And this is not just the financial institutions, but as we'll show in a slide here, is ordinal inscriptions. Now this just started really in any real material amount in January, really took off in February and mushroomed in March. And when you look at the number of ordinal inscriptions on the Bitcoin blockchain since the beginning of the year has been over 1 million. We just are doing essentially what we call premium or large ordinals. These require special skills and to be able to do that without adding carbon. DMG is the only one that can do that. And then we have other pieces we've talked about in the past, our relationship with Bosonic. They're a key partner in terms of enabling exchange capability. They have really come up with a way of taking risk out of the exchange business, and we are excited about their potential. And finally, wallet solutions. We have our own wallet technology. We've been using it for ordinals, and we've been using it for our pool. What we want to ultimately do is to provide custody solutions. And earlier we had looked at our investment in Brain as potentially enabling that. That's still there, but we're also looking at other alternatives to be able to provide that. That's a longer term effort in conjunction with building an ecosystem for the financial institutions. So what's the business model when we talk about this? We use this iceberg analogy because Bitcoin mining, you kind of look at it, there's over 300,000 Bitcoins to be mined. That's $10 billion US. And of course, with the halving next year, that will go down. What we're really looking at is the monetization of Bitcoin transactions as the longer term future. And this was clearly the vision of Satoshi back in 2008, was to build something where the block subsidy would decline over time and transaction fees would take over. And this is exactly how we're building and making our company work, is really building such that over the next few years, what the revenue we get related to Bitcoin transactions will become much more material. With TerraPool, our goal is to get 10% of the Bitcoin network. That would allow us to mine, for TerraPool, to mine about 100 blocks a day. What we want to get is at least 1% net revenue from mining those blocks. In addition, that's when you look at it, okay, that's a relatively small opportunity. But on top of that, with all these other services we're talking about, is all the Bitcoin that have been mined to date, the 19 plus million Bitcoin that have been mined to date, but we don't want to exclude them. Financial institutions going forward want to do that without adding carbon. And there are now different approaches emerging where they can essentially offset the carbon that was created when those Bitcoins were mined. So even that much larger opportunity can now essentially be done in a carbon neutral way. And this will address a lot of the ESG concerns that people have with the Bitcoin network. So let's just look at each of the businesses. Core, key thing here is we own our infrastructure. In beautiful Christina Lake, right near the Washington state border, It's really our flagship. We are looking to build out other facilities. This is something that we've said for a while. And when we have those, we'll announce it. But usually the reason we haven't done it is the incremental cost to build out in Christina Lake has always to date worked out more favorably. And that's because we have still a lot of capacity to expand. We have an 85 megawatt substation. We're using less than half of that right now. So we still have lots of opportunity to expand. We did announce that we bought 40 megawatts worth of mining containers. We're in the process right now of doing the construction for a piece of that, and then over the year, we will build out the rest of that infrastructure. And when you look at the electrical world, that's about connecting our distribution line, because we have a substation that essentially converts electricity such that to a distribution line like you would have in your neighborhood, and then we step that down to the type of electricity we could use with the miners. That's relatively modest costs. And in terms of our growth, right now we're at 0.95 exahash in terms of our mining capacity. We just announced in the last week that we've purchased miners to get us to 1.2, and our goal is to get 2 exahash over. Originally, it was the end of this year, the calendar year. We extended that, but we know we need to grow our capacity as the network has grown as well. But one of the other ways to be able to grow capacity is immersion cooling. Immersion cooling, we project, will get us 40% more hash rate with our existing infrastructure. So if you multiply 1.4 times originally 1 and now 1.2, you see that we could get close to that 2 exahash just through deployment of immersion cooling. But this is complicated stuff. So we are taking our time, but our design philosophy is to keep things simple. We've seen a lot of design complexity, a lot of failures by other miners because of design too much complexity. And the other thing is just over-engineering a key component. So we've seen where components, certain things end up being bottlenecks in terms of being able to achieve what essentially are these overclocking goals. But we've done a lot of the groundwork, and we're excited about that for essentially the future of mining as we look post-halvening in the time frame being in mid-2024. Now let's talk about Core Plus. This is the exciting part of our software, and we really split we split this into 2 general areas. One is about reducing risk. The bosonic exchange technology essentially is between cross counterparty net settlement is what they call it. And what that means is that coins are never held by the exchange or the exchange to fiat currency. And we've been using this now for the better part of a year in terms of their technology to sell our coins to fiat. And we really believe this is kind of how exchanges should work. And for us, the longer term goal is to have other Terra Pool users utilize this. I mentioned we have longer term goals for wallet technology. Right now, we have that internal. But the other piece is really around the regulatory and compliance area for the financial institutions and being able to really build an ecosystem that services the financial institutions. So we have all these pieces. It's really, but building an ecosystem, as you know, is hard. The next goal with regards to what we want to do, as I alluded earlier, is moving Bitcoin that's already been created and doing that in a green way. But we stumbled upon the opportunity for ordinals that, first, let me just talk about Terra Pool. I'm all excited to tell you more about the ordinals and what's going on there, because this is additive revenue and this is new. But to be able to do that, we need our own pool, because we need to mine our own blocks, inject transactions, whether they be from the Fidelities of the world or they be ordinal inscriptions, into the blocks that we are making and placing on the Bitcoin blockchain. So this is kind of the first piece that we need. What's neat about TerraPool fitting in this regulatory and compliance area is we're a public company. So we're audited. That means the results of what happens on TerraPool audited. We also have, we're working with other parties for verifying the energy consumption. I think you'll see some things in the near future regarding that. We're very supportive of all the organizations that essentially want to create standards for Bitcoin mining using renewable energy. We expand it a little bit larger to carbon neutral. So from our point of view, whether it's flare gas and nuclear, we welcome those miners into TerraPool, because the idea is really about mitigating carbon emissions. So let's just talk about ordinals. And each of these, when you download the presentation, each of these blocks and these inscriptions have links. So you can go to the original source and see that. And also, thank you. Most of you are not familiar with the way a Bitcoin block physically looks. This is essentially the content. And you see that often transactions are just these small little green things, but on this website, this mempool.space, the ordinals are specifically shown as being blue, and you see that it looks very different than a typical block. Certainly there's been some controversy. Is this what Satoshi really wanted? Was putting somebody who might be a controversial figure onto the Bitcoin blockchain. But at the same time, the beauty of the Bitcoin blockchain is its censorship resistance. And generally, we support that. So we are not necessarily, some of you might find some of this art not necessarily along the lines of what you would want to pay for, but we're just really excited to be at the ground floor of what the community is doing. And Sheldon and I we are meeting directly with artists to get their content inscribed onto the Bitcoin blockchain. So we work with this group here, BitNips, that we announced. It's quite humorous in terms of kind of their take on Bored Apes. And speaking of which, Bored Apes utilized us for something very different. They actually used our block, which doesn't add carbon, the Bitcoin blockchain, and take the Satoshis that they're using for their 12-fold project. This dancing frog is actually, when you click on it, you'll see that it's a video with audio, and they're proclaiming in that one their approval or going back to a protocol developed close to 10 years ago called Counterparty that I guess they're fans of. And again, these are things that artists want to get out there and be able to show that they have something to say, and to do it on the world's most immutable blockchain. So the Bitcoin blockchain that content will be around forever, assuming there are miners like us who are getting incentivized to maintain that blockchain. And that's part of the beauty. That's what's attracting people. We're not ready yet to disclose what the revenue model from this is, but it's a substantial adder. And part of this is we feel that adder can help grow TerraPool as well, because it provides those financial returns that come from doing these projects we'll also come back to other Terra Pool members. And I'll just wrap up here in the next couple slides. We have a really tight team with our management team and our board. Our board has brought us a lot of value. Our board is really focused on the interests of the shareholders and helping management achieve its goals. And we've been really proud of that, of what they've been able to do for us. And finally, just looking at some of the summary financials, you see that our September quarter was kind of a low point. We picked up December quarter, and just kind of given trends, we're really encouraged about the outlook. So with that, I'll open it for any questions. Well, we're going to have to disclose clearly. Some of that will come through. The reason we're hesitant is because there's a combination of on-chain revenue that you see in the block, that's mined in the block, and then off-chain revenue, which is where some of the controversy is. People don't like the fact that miners may be paid off-chain, or the pool, that's separate from the miners contributing hash rate. But what I would say there is the majority of what we see is the majority of the revenues will be going to the pool, and you will see it in the block. And in a couple of the blocks there, the revenue was for the block was about 3/4 of a Bitcoin. For the DGods one, as an example, and so that's above the 6.25 Bitcoin for the block subsidy. Most of that is from the ordinal inscription, so it is substantive. The other thing is, we want to be careful, because are we, in terms of the ordinal inscription revenue, and I apologize for not repeating the question, but it's really about the revenue model around ordinals. And we just want to make sure this isn't just kind of a one-hit wonder. There are a few big names that are willing to pay, and then it tails off. So we're also too hesitant to beat our chest. We're hesitant to beat our chest and say, this is like the next big thing. But we are encouraged. And those types of numbers, half a Bitcoin, 3/4 of Bitcoin additional for doing these ordinal inscriptions, should give you an indication that there is substantial revenue that could be added in every single block mined through Terra Pool.
I think you're underplaying it.
Okay. And there's other things too that people are talking about. There's the technology called stamps. That is coming. There's also the first Satoshi in a block has additional value that the other ones don't. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. We want to be cautious in terms of hyping it at this point. Are there any other questions? Sure. I mean, the Bitcoin blockchain, in terms of its viability long term, I mean, people have been questioning this for a long time. And essentially, you kind of think in terms of the power consumption. It's, let's say right now, in the order of 11 gigawatts of powering infrastructure. That's a lot. So in terms of are the incentives going to be there to keep Bitcoin miners going? Well, at least price appreciation is kind of taken care of a lot of the happenings. And yes, we do believe that transaction fees will become much more substantial, maybe not in the direct way that Satoshi thought, but we're certainly encouraged there. And on Immersion, we're using a fairly standard approach of these are large tanks, large dry coolers, a standard refined industrial fluid that others are using. So these, again, are relatively low-risk approaches. We're not trying to reinvent the way Immersion is done. We're just trying to do it. What DMG has always done really well is do things very cost-effectively. So I'll end it there. Thank you.